board is yours.
All right, there. I'll take TV host comments in 2013 that can get you in trouble for 200.
That's the daily double. How much would you like to wager, John?
All right, I'll go big. I'll wager 4,000 and 10 cancel culture mulligans.
And the answer is, this new TV host of a popular TV game show had a podcast in 2013 in which he made comments that some found to be insensitive in 2021, which got him removed of his hosting duties.
All right, I know this one. Who is Mike Richards?
That is correct. Cancel culture guide.
Welcome to the Beau Show. There has been an interesting kerfuffle over on the set of the long-running game show Jeopardy. As newly minted host and successor to Alex Trebek, Mike Richards is now stepping down from his hosting duties. This came after Sony Pictures Television crowned him as Trebek's successor after a long round robin of guest hosts that ranged from Katie Couric to Aaron Rodgers to former Jeopardy winner Ken Jennings. Mike Richards was the executive producer of the show, and his job had been to find a new host to replace the late, great Alex Trebek. And let's be honest, those were certainly hard shoes to fill, no doubt. Trebek had been The Rock, an uncontroversial, steady-handed host who never missed a beat in a fast-paced game show environment. Trebek was trusted the way that, say, Walter Cronkite was trusted in the news world. But my, how far we have come from those days. Now we have Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, CNN, the most untrusted name in news. These aren't journalists, these are spin artists, and no strangers to controversy. But back to Trebek. It was likely an arduous process to find his replacement. So smartly, they auditioned a bunch of people, many of whom had a lot of TV experience, and some of whom had, well, virtually none. Earlier in the week, the website The Ringer reported about past misogynistic and insensitive remarks that Richards made on the 2013 podcast he hosted, called The Random Show, and that is spelled R-A-N-D-U-M-B, so like random. In 2013, Mike Richards was executive producer of another famous game show, The Price is Right. His Random Show podcast was supposed to give viewers a behind-the-scenes look at The Price is Right. In 2020, Richards was named executive producer of Jeopardy, and just recently named the new host after an exhaustive search. Guest hosts included former winners like Ken Jennings, but also TV names like Savannah Guthrie, Katie Couric, Robin Roberts, LeVar Burton, and Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Kristen Salzville, a former contestant, expressed contempt for the selection of Richards, saying that it was clear that LeVar Burton and Aaron Rodgers had a very strong personal connection and interest in being hired. Now, why Aaron Rodgers wanted the role so badly, I'm not entirely sure. He's a world-class quarterback, but who knows, maybe he's tired of football. He certainly seemed to express some disdain in the off-season. The Ringer article makes references to lawsuits against male leadership at The Price is Right, alleging mistreatment of female employees. Richards' name was in one of those lawsuits, but the name was dropped before it was settled. However, one of the models on the show sued the show for mistreatment after she became pregnant, where she understood that Richards might have fired her if he had known she would be getting pregnant. However, Richards' email to all of the Jeopardy staff reveals that the show celebrated 7 births by female models on the show. There were claims that Richards wanted the female models in showier clothing and bikinis, which raised some eyebrows. There were 41 episodes of Richards' podcast in which he had many female co-hosts. And it sounds to me like this show was a much milder version of Howard Stern's show, or even The Man Show, hosted by Adam Carolla and Jimmy Kimmel. The Ringer asked Richards' agent about these past comments from the podcast, and he removed all episodes from his website. Richards issued a statement saying, "It is humbling to confront a terribly embarrassing moment of misjudgment, thoughtlessness, and insensitivity from nearly a decade ago. Looking back now, there is no excuse, of course, for the comments I made on this podcast, and I'm deeply sorry. The podcast was intended to be a series of irreverent conversations between longtime friends who had a history of joking around. Even with the passage of time, it's more than clear that my attempts to be funny and provocative were not acceptable, and I have removed the episodes. My responsibilities today as a father, a husband, and a public personality who speaks to many people through my role on television means I have substantial and serious obligations as a role model, and I intend to live up to them, unquote. Sony says it was unaware of the podcast until The Ringer created the article. So without The Ringer, we might not even be aware of this. But this is a classic cancel culture moment. One article, one podcast, donezo. As for the host selection process, Richards told the New York Times that they went deeply into analytics and focus groups to find their best choice. Sony TV chairman Ravia Ahuja said that both Richards and Jeopardy tournament host Mayim Bialik were at the top of their research analytics. Apparently, some Jeopardy fans really thought that Ken Jennings would be the heir apparent, since he had contact with Alex Trebek before his death and even narrated most of Trebek's memoir, as well as being hired to be a consulting producer for the show. Just last May, Mike Richards said that he was never meant to be part of the guest host rotation, so we don't know exactly when he became considered. But Ken Jennings did post the best ratings of any guest host in his tenure. Mike Richards had been considered to replace Bob Barker for The Price is Right years ago. But producers didn't feel he brought anything special to the table. But he must have impressed, because he was hired as Price's co-executive producer in 2008. Richards also helped sell a reboot of Let's Make a Deal to CBS. Now, I listened to audio clips from Richards' podcast, and it was always kind of a gossipy back and forth, at times tawdry banter, nothing you haven't heard from the king of media, Howard Stern. And we know that Stern went on to be a judge for America's Got Talent. And no one batted an eye, right? I listened to another clip where Richards talks about unemployment. Have a listen.
See, I don't want to make this a political show.
I know.
Because here's the thing with Beth, is that I know that you're hardworking, and I know that you're out there trying to get stuff going. Mm-hmm. The dangerous side about the crack that you just took is that not everyone is like you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But everyone can collect unemployment, which is why we have so many people on unemployment right now. Mm-hmm. Which is why we have so many people on food stamps. Because what if you got unemployment and food stamps? You'd be like, good Lord, you know what I'm saying?
Makes me wonder if the "damn you Obama" comment is actually what got him in trouble. Because the other stuff is, well, it's relatively mild, but he makes the comment that if she takes unemployment money and gives it to someone homeless, it's like the circle of no life. The Ringer goes on to devote a whole paragraph to the fact that Richards received a Paycheck Protection Program loan from the government for the COVID-19 economic disaster relief. The article also puts this in stark contrast to Alex Trebek, who gave money to a homeless shelter. So the article paints him out to be a stiff, white, possibly conservative, who doesn't care about the homeless. Richards talked about hosting on his podcast, making references to Jeff Probst of Survivor and Ryan Seacrest. Take a listen to this.
Jeff Probst had a daytime talk show, which I was cheering for because I like, the average white guy host. I cheer for him to succeed because I feel like through his success, I could have some success hosting.
It's clear Richards understands the workings of finding a host and recognizing talent, which is an art. But even hosts like Pat Sajak, who is hilariously funny on Twitter, is no stranger to controversy. But that's where humor gets lost in the postmodern world, the era of revisionist history. Comedians can't go to colleges anymore. Humor is found to be insensitive and offensive. And while Richards at the time was just having an honest, authentic conversation, it's looked at retrospectively as derogatory. Think of Donald Trump, what he has said and continues to say. It can be largely irreverent. Take what he said recently at his rally in Alabama.
You know what woke means? It means you're a loser. Everything woke. Everything woke. It's true. Everything woke turns to shit, okay? It's true.
I mean, did you see the reaction? People think like Trump does, but they can't say it in public because of wokeism. There's something refreshing about that honesty. We've gone totally away from authenticity and gone to repressive, politically correct speech. It's just fake. One of Alex Trebek's favorite comments was that the host is not the star of the show. It's the contestants. And I think Alex had that type of humility. He always found the balance. And if that's true, hiring a celebrity might have been a bad decision. It takes away from the focus of the show and the learning that comes with it. It's clear that Richards wanted to expand and snazz up the show a bit, and likely broaden its audience. After all, how many people under 40 do you know that watch Jeopardy? Wouldn't you want younger people to watch it and be that knowledgeable? Any old show has to be able to adapt, but while also maintaining integrity and consistency. I think about Billy Joel and Elton John being able to stay musically relevant over decades. That's hard to do. But this notion of canceling someone for a podcast, where it seems to be pretty mild compared to what we hear today, is part of culture's problem, not Mike Richards' problem. It's an oversensitivity to authenticity. We saw this with Kevin Hart being removed from hosting the Oscars not long ago. We just saw it with the stepping down of Chris Harrison of The Bachelor. And the feeling I get from this piece by The Ringer is that they want anything other than a straight white male. There's a fair argument to be made that Richards may have elevated himself to the top of the pile since he's the show's executive producer. But taking this podcast, which was largely unknown, and then using that as ammo speaks to our current hitman society. Hosts like Al Sharpton, Chris Cuomo, Joy Behar, and many others have massive skeletons in their closet from past conduct. But no one seems to be demanding their removal. I've been the subject of many castings in my career, so I know what the process is like and how many emotions get stirred up. These decisions can be so arbitrary and subjective, but we've got to stop looking at casting or promotions as open season. I fully understand that filling Alex Trebek's shoes is a massive mission. No one can really replace him and do what he did. Ken Jennings might have even been the best choice, who knows? But the notion now is to push for so much diversity that the person's qualifications are less important than their skin color, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Here's the exact language, verbatim, from the Associated Press article about this controversy. Here's what they say, quote, "Giving the flagship show to Richards, who's firmly in the cookie-cutter host mold of a white, square-jawed young man, struck some as proof of an insincere effort by the studio to consider a woman, a person of color, or someone from the LGBTQ community. More than half of the guest hosts fall into one or more of those groups," unquote. Now that language in and of itself is divisive and it's biased. It demeans what they consider to be a cookie-cutter white man, and then makes the assumption that Sony didn't consider anyone else, which is simply not true. The AP inserts itself in the narrative in this way. And I have more news for you. A studio can decide whatever it wants to do to give a show its best chance. They fail all the time, mind you, but they deliberate over these things. And both Richards and Bachelor host Chris Harrison bowed to the wokies. They started apologizing left and right. Do you think Howard Stern apologizes? Of course not. He's made a career out of honest irreverence. And that honesty can be refreshing. It's like Jordan Peterson says, you have to be willing to be offended to find truth. We can't walk on eggshells all the time. Now, you look at a guy like Governor Andrew Cuomo. That's not a hit job. That is truly unfettered abuse and harassment. That's behavior that is not only unbecoming of a governor, but it should have been stopped a long time ago. And look how long it took for him to step down. Mike Richards didn't do this. He made some off-color comments, sure. We hear off-color stuff on morning radio shows every day, even if it's semi-clean. Much of the reason Howard Stern wanted to go into Sirius XM radio was to get out of the FCC's grip. He wanted total freedom to say what he wanted. And people followed him. He became even more successful. I think if they crowned Richards the host a mere a week after Trebek and then did not do an extensive search, you could argue that that was all just inside baseball and nepotism. But that didn't happen. Dozens got a crack at the job. Sony did the selecting and also hired Mayim Bialik, a modern Orthodox Jewish woman. Now, I also understand that fans of Jeopardy have a say, at least in terms of their viewership. If they don't like Richards, they can complain, of course, or they can stop watching the show. But the notion of hurting a person's opportunities through a retrospective review of anything they've said or done is a relatively recent and harmful phenomenon. This one article and the subsequent forums and backlash have caused Sony to remove Richards from contention and resume a new host search. The issue with this is that when things like this happen, it almost forces a company into making a selection so opposite of the person they removed in order to appeal to an angry few. Merit sometimes becomes an afterthought or tertiary consideration. It becomes more about optics. There is no perfect replacement for Alex Trebek. There are certainly some good ones, but remember that Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon have both had careers that have been riddled with insensitive conduct by today's standards, and neither of them lost their hosting jobs. And frankly, neither compares to the likes of Johnny Carson, Leno, or Letterman anyway. Neither are near as diplomatic or as funny. Could Ken Jennings or LeVar Burton do the job well? I'm sure they could, and ultimately maybe one of those guys gets the nod. Hosting a show is a combination of execution, professionalism, savvy improvisation, and a wide variety of knowledge. Trebek juggled all of this and did it with a life of relative privacy and without scandal. So anyone stepping into this role has their work cut out for them. And on top of it, we have rewarded bad behavior in the past in entertainment. Companies have allowed vile, profane people to be in high echelon positions, but they also allow the mob to control their creative process. And if they do that, we will lose all creativity again. That's mob rule. Isn't that why there are no angels in politics? Because if you were an angel, you'd be dragged through the mud in the process. No one would want to go through it. I've seen a lot of very poor casting decisions made over my career. I've seen things that are inexplicable, that are unconscionable. It's what you get into when you're in this business. I realize that businesses they're not total democracies. You don't have total freedom of speech. But using a retrospective process to dig up dirt from the past is becoming an all too frequent method of punishment. And it's getting out of hand. Unless the conduct is provably egregious, like Andrew Cuomo, for instance, then we have to take a step back. I'm not even saying that Mike Richards is the best replacement, but I can say that any person who's being considered should be aware of anything they've ever said or done. Because the PC culture and wokeism is taking far too much of a priority amid hurting what otherwise are some very talented people. Thanks for watching today, whether it's on social or NTD television. Be sure to catch any of my past episodes on the NTD website or on your favorite social media platform. I'm Beau, and that's the show.